coconut. No bueno.
Are you snacking right now? No.
No, I'm fine. Just dying a little bit.
Welcome back, marketing nerds of the world, for another episode of HAMYAW. And today, joining us for the next episode of HAMYAW and Friends, better known as HAMYAW AF, is the amazing Maggie Frank Shu, the email whisperer, copywriter, and happens to be the owner and proprietor of the best email list you've never heard of. So make sure you look her up at the end of this episode. But today, one thing we want to talk about is a kind of painful reality of sales and putting yourself out there in the world. A moment where you are on a sales call in the middle of a launch and you have an idea of specifically who you want to work with and who your customer is, but the only people who are applying or reaching out to work with you are people who are not quite a fit. And because you want to hit certain numbers, you want to make sure you have a certain amount in your bank account that month, you want to make sure you can brag about a successful launch on Facebook after it happens, you go into panic mode, which means you start letting people in who aren't necessarily a fit, who aren't necessarily, don't have the level of experience or knowledge that you were expecting or anticipating. And that in turn changes the experience of the one-on-one coaching you're doing, the client work, the program or course that you're leading, and it basically turns everything around because you hit the panic button and decide to open the doors a little bit wider to people who may not be a perfect fit so you can make sure you make your numbers. Part of the reason why we're talking about this week is I actually just closed down a launch for my idea incubator Thunder, which was so much fun to put together, and I have some really incredible people in there who are really a great fit, but I had to be crazy selective in the process, and I'd set out to do that. But about halfway, what's happening? I'm on Voxer tomorrow being like, oh my God, am I gonna get people who are a fit in this? Should I just shut the whole thing down? I hate launching, what is going on? And in the end, I stuck to my guns and ended up with a really excellent, really perfect fit group of people in the incubator, but it took a while to get there. I think this is actually a really normal experience for entrepreneurs, for anyone selling themselves or putting themselves out into the world. So Maggie and Margot, I would love to hear your profit panic experiences, share some war stories, and then I'd love to talk a little bit about solutions. How does that feel?
Feels awesome. Sounds really good.
I'm having panic. Like, I already am like reliving it all.
Residual panic. Maggie, talk to me a little bit about your experience with this. I know that especially this profit panic moment also happens in one-on-one work, or you're having a sales call with somebody who they're not quite a fit to work for and you know it, but you give the yes anyway. When you feel yourself falling into a trap like that, what do you tend to do?
I remember I've written the story of the worst, situation that came as a result of that, and basically tattooed it on my forehead. Yeah, it's up in here somewhere. Like, it's literally posted because I can't let that happen again. Story. When I wanted to kind of rev my business up again after I had my son 2 years ago, I had like the emergency brake on, it felt like. And I did need to say yes to, or, I needed to just bring people in and kind of figure out what do I do again. And I was saying yes to a lot of different things, and that was going fine for a while. And then it kind of was spiraling out of control. I had bespoke contracts, and like just everything was different for each person. I couldn't remember what the fuck was going on, and so eventually, like, I did that one too many times, and it was that last time with a client that was a type of person who would be like, on the phone in the call before we even agreed to work together, it was like, oh yeah, I've worked with people like you, and you guys are pretty much all garbage, so impress me, he didn't use those words.
I've been on that call. I've been on that call. We've all been on that call.
And I was like, yeah, I'll be impressive because I'm awesome. But, that not really being as fully aware of
that's a
how unimpressible something like that is.
Entrepreneurial negging is what that is. Like, everyone sucks. Do you suck? Like, no, I'm really good.
Negging. That is exactly what it is. And my husband said, he's a psychiatrist, and he's, hand to God. It's really helpful because he's not someone he doesn't like shrink you like at parties or whatever. But like when I tell him some stories, he can kind of relate it to experiences he had, especially in his early days, like as a resident when he was more training, because that's sort of like where I'm more like learning as I go. Oh yeah, for like there's patients like that like they go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and it's just like, none of you help me. It's like maybe they've drawn short straws all the time, or maybe they have an attitude or an issue in their own mind that's like they're not to be helped. They're really part of the experience is to prove that nobody knows what they're doing except them or whatever. So anyway, that was the experience. And
there's a really good point here that I want to call out of like the difference between being specific because you know exactly who you're looking for and feeling panic that you're not going to fill the seats, and that beginning training yourself to know who the right fit is in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. And I think they're different because like I'm on the other end of the spectrum from you guys when I like overly say no, actually. When I probably should say yes, because I'm like, oh no, this person, that's not right. When really I should probably like give more chances, because I'm really quick to, the ghosts of clients past are always direct decisions. No, but I do think there comes like what you're talking about, Maggie, there comes a point where you do have to train yourself to say yes, or experience things and like understand that there's a pattern of behavior you're looking for. And you have to say yes a bunch. It's like the Derek Sivers quote that everyone misunderstands when he's like, it's either a hell yes or a no. You graduate to that. In the beginning, you just say yes to everyone.
Right.
That's how you figure out what you say no to.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely.
But you can become selective through this process of like having people go through them. And I don't think, Maggie, I don't think I would, because you were like, I know you've been through a couple more launches, and that is true. And I don't think I would have been as dead set on this kind of level of like precision about who I let in if it wasn't for my past experiences. And if you're former students, if you're watching this, I love you all. You are all amazing. But it's a matter of a level of energy it requires to make sure somebody can get the benefit from whatever it is that you're working on together, whether it's a client, whether it's a student, whether it's a program participant. I think it's just very interesting because being selective, and I really appreciated when Margot let me into the arena, because I was like, I feel so special. So it definitely creates that kind of experience as well. But it's about understanding patterns and also learning to manage your energy as an entrepreneur. Because like you said, like if you're creating bespoke contracts for everybody, if you are really creating individual experiences, if you are letting people in who are maybe a couple years behind where you wanted people to be for a certain program, you are just going to have to spend more energy on them. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that's what we forget, is that we think about, because we get focused on the money, we get focused on hitting our numbers and making sure our ego gets a little bit pumped up, depending on, by our numbers, and that we can share how much we're making every month and feel confident if that's something that is in our arsenal. But it really is about, we've had an episode about this on hustle culture with Brittany, where people forget they need to protect their energy.
But I think like everything you're saying is like so swimming upstream from, I have a lot of clients who are online entrepreneurs, and I just like that I feel like the barrage of the way I'm always paying attention to, of course, because we're all marketers, how people are marketing and what are they, their messaging and stuff. I just feel like the idea is, and this might sound super cynical, but I just feel like the idea is to kind of become known and then make a course, and then just everybody and their uncle should buy that. And there's no process around whether this would actually help somebody. It's just about writing the perfect copy that makes people feel like, yes, this is exactly what it is that'll solve my problem. Where's my credit card? And that's courses, right? I speak to people all the time who are like, yeah, I'm going to make a course, because they want to do that, right? And it's just interesting to hear you, and both of you, it's very much different. It's very like anti the norm, I think.
Anti the norm?
Like right as you're talking, it's making me interrogate if I could do anything in my business, or I could be massive, right? Like I actually wouldn't want to do that. But it starts now by saying like, okay, then you everything that you create, and every time you bring somebody in, you have these boundaries based on
I was just talking to a reader who like told me in confidence that she like admitted she didn't want to be a personal brand. And I was just like, why do you need to be a person? What does that have to do with anything? Like, why would you need to be that? And it was like so painful for her. And she was like, thought that it was just part of the ethos of like how you, not even ethos, tactics of like, this is what you do to grow your business. And I was like, if you want to be a freelancer, be a freelancer. And I've had so many entrepreneurs share these things with me of like, they don't realize that some of the advice, like it's not one size fits all. We give that to people sometimes, like this is the template, this is the thing you need to do. I want to tie this back actually to kind of where we started this conversation. I want to talk about the panic, because I think that the panic piece of this is the more interesting part, regardless of why it happens. My hypothesis is that it has to do with these templates that we think we're supposed to follow and the expectations we set ourselves on like what a good launch means, what a profitable launch means, what a product sale means, what it means to actually have marketed something, how big your list should be, how much revenue it should have generated, how many units you are supposed to have sold. And I think that the panic button for me, I'll speak really transparently, is like around shame. Like when I see that I'll have Inc. calling me like a great marketer, and then I'll see that like something didn't sell that well, and I'm like, no one can know. Like when really it's like I lose my objectivity and my ability to be like, no, you positioned it wrong. The end. Yeah. Or your market wasn't ready. Like the end. Like none of these things were as big as they feel, but in the moment, I feel like my entire brand is on the line. Every single time I go in to sell something and it's like, everyone's watching. They all want to know Margot's doing. Not true. No one cares. But like,
I care. But no,
everyone in the world is the audience for how you're doing your launch, you know?
Yeah. Through and through. And I also think we forget too that product launching, selling a course, selling a program so you can get off the client hamster wheel, it doesn't actually solve a problem at first. Like it's all of your issues are going to follow you, which is where like if you have profit panic on one-to-one sales calls, you're going to have profit panic during launch. Like it's just the reality. And I think people forget that it's a different animal because we are sold this idea of like courses and programs as well as like a solution to the problem. Like, are you tired of being on the client hamster wheel? Make a course, sell that, hooray. But in the reality, it's a challenging thing. Like you have to do your content marketing strategy. You have to set up a launch strategy. You have to make sure you have a good opt-in and webinar. You have to you have to follow the rules that you follow for clients for yourself, which for some reason is so much more emotional than when you do it for clients.
Like I'm going through this and I've had clients who've done launches and then like the thing hasn't sold the way they wanted it to. Yeah. And then, later it did, but sort of like, that's actually Margot, like I've spent a lot of time thinking about what you do about it. Cause what I've seen almost everybody do is just give up and go like, with my clients and stuff, or blame but a lot of shame of like sort of, cause I can see everything, in the back of everything, right? The back of the ConvertKit, the back of the e-commerce platform. I mean, that's sort of the whole thing with the like shiny object syndrome is like, people will do it and then like, it doesn't work like they thought it would. And then they'll be like, well, and they'll throw the whole thing out. I see like a lot of people just kind of give up, even from one email, I sent it, I didn't feel the thing back, I didn't feel the love back, and it must be terrible.
Wait, can you talk to us about this? Because like you are the email like whisperer. And I'm curious because I have my own theories, but like I have noticed that when I go behind the scenes in people's businesses that don't have online businesses that are their brand, they tend to be a lot more objective, where it's like, this thing worked, this didn't. I mean, there's still issues, but like it's easier to to have some distance. The second we start selling ourselves via email or our IP, it's like a lot more personal. Can you talk to us about why that happens and why it feels so much like we're on the line?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's obvious why, like, if it's you still have to say like, this is my business, this isn't me. Actually, like, she's a coach. I think her name's Hero Boga or something.
Yeah, I know Hero Boga.
She said something like, even if you're the face of the business is not you. And if you go around being like, the business is me, you will burn out on it so fast, you'll hate it, because things go wrong in business, shit happens. And every time stuff like that happens, and I'm not just talking about like, client management stuff, but just anything, people don't respond the way that you thought they would to a thing that you put out there, then it's like always a rejection of you. Because I guess I'm a personal brand that like, I always feel I get like these weird PTSD flashbacks to online dating. Like when people don't respond to some of my, cause I did online dating for a couple of years before I met the guy that I'm married to now, that guy. And I met him online and it was after a string, and I did it in New York City, and there was no Tinder yet, but there was, it was still kind of like,
lucky you.
You get excited about something or somebody, and the way you set up your profile, and it's this version of you, and anyway, and so like that feeling that you get of like you put yourself out there and you don't even know this person, but they don't like you, and that even as a personal brand, I think I'd love to see people be more treating it like it was something completely different.
Yeah.
Because if you treat it like that they're enmeshed, then you're always going to feel like shit about yourself when something doesn't go right.
Yeah. And I think making sure we understand, like, as it feels like rejection, there's no way to avoid that. Like, unless you're a robot, when you're selling something that you put your whole heart into and the units aren't moving, like, it feels like rejection, and that sucks. But then you have to hit up your creative allies on Voxer, and they will remind you that it's not rejection, it's data. And even then, like, it still sucks in the moment, but it's so true. Like, just like in online dating, like, the fact that that person didn't resonate with you, that's good data. They probably weren't for you anyway. So you kind of move on and move along. But yeah, and then this is, again, the issue with having a personal brand that feels that is you and your face and your name. And the fact that people are rejecting it makes it feel like a rejection of you, period. And it's so hard to avoid.
It just made me think, because I am often coaching my people, my students, whatever, to get deeper, what are they really trying to say? What are they really trying to put out there? And that's very personal.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, when they sell something and it doesn't go, I'm like, the next thing we do is we go like, this isn't a failure. We need to learn from this. How do we learn from this? And so they need to put this remove and distance. Boy, I'm learning something in this. And I've never thought about how much I'm asking of people, because they both have to be like very connected to why they're doing this and feel very deeply about it, and then have that moment where they can separate from it. That's hard.
This is why I tell people you shouldn't start with why. And I get so much flack for it, but I think like Simon Sinek was talking about big companies. There comes a place on the bell curve, like when you're at the beginning and you're trying, like when you ask yourself what your why is, you're actually asking yourself, who am I? And you go into existential crisis mode. Like it leads nowhere good, because you're like, well, I care about the environment and I care about my mom. So is my why my family, and is it my daughter? But also it doesn't mean that I really care about space and this and that. And like, you just go all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's not centered and focused. And once you have a business and you know what you're selling, then you can go deeper and go, okay, what's motivating us to sell this? How do we connect this to what the customer needs? And like, there are a lot more boundaries to the conversation.
Yeah.
To keep it productive and useful. Like, you guys don't need to know all of we're all multifaceted humans. Nobody's website is going to show all sides of you. Just like online dating, and they shouldn't. Like, your website, that would be so boring. It just showed everything about you. Like,
And this is so interesting too, and this is why, and Maggie, you made such a great point, that it's so hard to understand what it's like until you're in it. And this is why I think entrepreneurs have to be really careful in the way that we talk about sales when we haven't had to sell anything. Because I, once upon a time, when I was like on the writing end of launches for clients, I would like basically make fun of webinars. And because, first of all, some webinars deserve to be made fun of. Some of them aren't necessarily like loaded with great information. They're just an upsell. But when it came time to sell a high ticket program, I was like, oh shit, like this is really difficult to do well. Like, and this is what's going to move the needle, because if you're just peppering people with emails, you're not going to make the sale. You're not going to go through the process. And it's really easy to fall into the trap of being like, oh, I hate sales. I hate being sold to, blah, blah, blah. But then you have something to offer and you have to go through that process. And you have to understand like the stages of it, yay, this thing. Okay, I sent it out, hold my breath. Oh my God, where is everybody? Oh my God, what am I gonna do? Oh my God, hitting the panic button. Okay, now things are moving. Like, it's just so hard to understand when we experience it. And so I think even though so many of us work in marketing, work in branding, work in sales, we have such a disdain for when our colleagues are trying to present us with something like habitually. And I find there's a lot of like, almost entrepreneurial counterculture around that. My friend Shanae Howard calls it the anti-marketing elite. Yeah, exactly. Which is people like who are successful in business, but roll their eyes in most traditional marketing because they haven't had to do it that way. So yeah, that's something I think, I hope our readers take away from this too, is when they're going through this emotional process, like, first of all, they're not alone. All of us go through it when you're putting your spirit out on a platter. But I hope that people remember to have a little more reverence for the process in a way, because this shit is hard, period. Period.
I wonder too how much of this is built into the fact that it's a launch. Like, you think, so we have a mutual friend, actually all three of us, Ross, who is also like a brilliant email copywriter. And he has a philosophy that is like anti-launches, that you should be open every day. And it's a whole new approach to selling. You still have to encounter the same fears around selling, but I wonder how much of the like panic that we're talking about and the like feeling of either needing to let people in who aren't a good fit or hit the abort button, which is usually what I feel, is like a function of this arbitrary constraint that you've placed on yourself for a specific amount of time to create urgency and scarcity and exclusivity, which are important in selling.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of it is exclusive, because I'm trying to think, like, I felt that way when I first launched my Skillshare course, but now it sells on its own monthly, and I don't really think about it. There's also degrees of removal, like what Maggie was talking about earlier, that buffer me between it and the direct sale. Like, I'm not actively selling it, and so it's not. Let's not talk about it as passive income. It's like $90 a month. Okay, like that's not great. But it's interesting to watch what happens and how disconnected I feel from it. Like, I don't have trouble in the same way because I'm not trying to hit like really high numbers with it. And it's a slow trickle of stuff, which is just a totally different approach.
Yeah, and it's also a totally different offer. Like selling a $90 to $200 product is easy because it's not a sacrifice financially. It's when you get into the high ticket, 1,000, like high ticket, 1,000. But when you get above that level, then you get the resistance. Then you have people needing to pull out their credit cards. Like,
that's a really good point.
Like a whole different ballgame.
I really agree with a lot of what Ross says, but but what I like about the launch deal is that you learn a lot quickly. You know, I like the way that he's talking about it because it sounds very seductive. It's like, oh, it's again what we were talking about earlier. It's like, I can't, fuck this shit, right? I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. He's got this better way. But in the end, you're always going to encounter the same issues and maybe even the same kind of sequence that Hillary laid out. But if not that exact sequence in that order, then something where it's like, oh, they didn't want it. You're always going to hit that eventually. And you have to figure out how to get past that, you know, how to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so true. I think
absolutely.
That's a really good note actually to wrap this up on, because I think that it comes down to having that grit. My dad used to say, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. Learn what worked, what didn't, why did it work, and then like, how do I get back up and do it again and just like edit it? Because there's no way to divorce yourself from that personal feeling other than jumping in and doing it again and doing it enough times that you get that it's a pattern. Now, you and I have talked about this with email, that like at a certain point you email enough that like you stop feeling so emotional about how people respond to you.
Yes.
Like, but that only comes with quantity and time.
Reps. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we close out, I would like to go around the virtual room and give one takeaway. If someone takes nothing else away, what do you want them to know? Hill, hit us up.
For me, I think it would just be hang in there. Like, it's not going to be A+ across the board from the first email, from the first launch, from the first everything. Keep in mind, a launch is above all creating a new offer. Even one-on-one work, you are introducing a new idea into the space, and you've got to get time to plant the seeds and to let it germinate. So if things aren't going well, chances are it may not be you, it may not be the offer, but go through it, see it through, hang in there. And when you feel ready, do it again and do it better. You got this.
Maggie, what do you got for us?
The thing I would say is externalize a little bit. So what's been helping me lately is really, as I'm going through, this is a little bit woo-woo because it like meditatively, I'll see myself really struggling, especially like, so if I hit a place where no sales or really below expectations, where I immediately want to give up. I don't think that's that uncommon. It's who I am in lots of ways, right? Like if I train for a marathon and then like I get really sick of it in the middle or something like that. But I think externalizing helps a lot, realizing that you're at a certain point in the process. You can't see what the end is going to be, but you have to realize that what's going on right now is something you can actually learn from. You can sort of observe if you can get a little bit of distance even within it and kind of understand, okay, that's what's happening right now. Based on that, if you're a marketer, this is what I would tell a client their next move should be. And I think it helps actually to reach out, like you said, reach out to your friends or reach out to your business buddies to get a little bit of perspective. So I would say externalize and don't make it all inside.
I like that too. I would say don't lose the lesson and like recognize that it's about putting in the reps and being objective about like, okay, what worked, what didn't. This is a thing I stole from my friend Shannon, who you guys know, but I like to put a list of like, this is how I'm feeling. these are things that happened. And
Yeah.
I'm able to show the difference between the two, because I will go, my panic will tell me that like the world is on fire and children will die and like everything is bad and you just need to go to law school and go get a regular job and stop trying to do this stuff. And so I need to let that live somewhere. So I'll put something where I'm like, okay, here are all the things I'm feeling. And then here's what actually happened, which is like 1 person clicked, 3 people clicked. And
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that happened. And then you can like start to be objective. Like, why did only 3 people click? Well, maybe you shouldn't email on a Saturday at 11 p.m.
I love that. Yes.
A little more objective about what's happening and what your role was in it and how to maybe improve next time. So don't lose the lesson and keep watching HAMYAW if you want more lessons.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. Don't panic. All right. So I'm Margot Aaron.
I'm Hillary Weiss.
And this is
Maggie Frank Shoe.
Yes.
Yes. This has been HAMYAW AF and friends. If you like this episode, please like it below, share it with your friends, comment. We have Maggie, who is also going to be monitoring comments with us. We would love to continue this conversation with you guys, hear about what your panic freak monsters are saying, how you have learned and grown, what you decided to abort, what you wish you hadn't done. Join us in the comments below and subscribe to our channel. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.